It began with a flash of blinding white. Then came the silence. The birds stopped chirping. The wind froze mid-breath when the 15 Marines of Echo Platoon blinked open their eyes. The desert landscape of Nevada had vanished. In its place stood a dense, eerie forest, dotted with primitive roads, crumbling stone milestones, and distant smoke trails. Sergeant Travis McCain, the platoon leader, instantly dropped to a knee and gave the halt signal around him. Boots thudded lightly into dirt. 2 millennia older than the ground they had walked on. Seconds ago, their training grounds had disappeared, but their rifles had not, nor had the gear, the SATCOM unit, or the 2 Minaraps armored vehicles that now stood like war beasts from a different world. "What in God's name?" muttered Corporal Ramirez, scanning the tree line through his ACOG's sight. No one had an answer. Their comms went silent. GPS was useless. The stars, those few visible above, did not match their known coordinates. And yet the smoke rising in the east looked real, and the sound that followed footsteps marching, not the rhythmic stomp of modern combat boots, but thousands of synchronized sandals, wood and leather grinding against gravel, approaching from just beyond the hill. They had no idea yet, but they had just been dropped into Ad 117, the height of the Roman Empire, and what was coming over the ridge was a legion. Over 5,000 disciplined Roman soldiers led by their centurion Lucius Marcellus Vero, whose scouts had spotted the metal beasts from afar to him. This was no anomaly. It was a test from the gods, and he intended to pass. Travis stared into the horizon. Binoculars confirmed it, rows upon rows of men with shields, glinting breastplates, red crests, pilum spears were raised. Ballistae creaked into position. Legionaries formed their signature testudo formation, shields overlapping like a tortoiseshell, disciplined and methodical. A war machine from the past, marching against warriors of the future. "Rules of engagement?" Ramirez asked. Voice shaky, "Do not fire unless fired upon." McCain said instinctively, then paused. "Unless you see a spear flying at your face, then light them up." Just as he spoke, a dozen arrows sailed through the air, useless. They bounced off Minarap armor like pebbles. One Marine flinched, then grinned, but McCain did not smile. His instincts screamed this was not a war. This was a timeline nightmare. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were gods to the men across the field. And that made them targets, curious ones, dangerous ones, but mortal all the same. They radioed out no response. They were on their own. Then came the first real test. The Romans unleashed their full assault. Ballista bolts, pilum spears, arrows, hundreds rained in. None penetrated the Marines, hunkered behind Minaraps, their Kevlar helmets absorbing what little danger there was. The roar of the Roman charge thundered like an ancient heartbeat. And when the legionaries got close, 20 yards out, McCain gave the order fire. What followed was slaughter-controlled bursts of M4 rifles dropped entire squads within seconds. Grenades tossed with precision sent shockwaves that tore through formations never designed to face explosives. The Marines did not cheer. They did not laugh. They just reloaded. Ramirez whispered, "This is not war, this is history dying." But even as bodies fell, the Romans did not stop. They regrouped, adjusted, tried to flank, some even attempted to climb the Minaraps. Others ran only to be tracked by thermal scopes, and finished by suppressive fire by sunset. The forest reeked of smoke, coppery blood, and singed leather. McCain looked at the battlefield. Hundreds down, perhaps over 1,000, and still more waited at the edge of the trees. It was not over, not even close. Because in that moment, far beyond their sights, the Roman general himself was watching. And unlike his men, he had just realized the truth. These were not soldiers. These were demons of war, but even demons he thought must bleed, and tomorrow they would find out how. The night was quiet, but the Marines did not sleep. They took shifts, eyes locked on thermal scopes while their minds tried to process what had happened. They were surrounded by a civilization lost to time, and yet very much alive and determined to kill them. Sergeant McCain sat by the Minarap, tapping his helmet with the butt of his rifle, trying to reach any signal. But nothing came through. The SATCOM unit was dead. The satellites that once gave them everything were now silent above a world not yet ready for them. Ramirez cleaned his weapon in silence next to him. Private Doyle was sketching something in a notebook, a habit he picked up during recon missions, but this time he was not drawing terrain. He was sketching Roman armor formations, the way the shields moved, how they layered themselves like a wall of flesh and iron. "It is like they are an organism," he muttered, "not a formation, a living thing." McCain nodded. "They are not stupid either. This will not be a repeat. They are going to come smarter and harder, and they did at sunrise." The Marines watched the tree line shift, and from it came the unexpected, not another wave of infantry, but silence, followed by the sudden crackle of fire. Dozens of oil-soaked carts pushed forward, ignited with flame, rolling toward the MRAPs. The Romans had learned they could not match metal with flesh. So now they brought fire, a weapon that ignored armor and danced across steel with equal hunger. "Fire, fire," McCain shouted as Marines opened up their rifles, igniting the carts mid-roll, sending explosions into the trees, but the flames caught on the dry forest and spread smoke began to blanket the battlefield. Vision, blurred scopes became useless. Then came the sounds, flanking horns, drums from all sides, echoing a sound that twisted the senses. "They are trying to blind us, isolate us, pick us apart," Ramirez said. Panic rising, McCain ordered them into a defensive diamond formation using the MRAPs as cover. But before they could fully position, Roman cavalry appeared from the rear. Fast, brutal, reckless, they carried long spears meant for impaling. They knew they could not pierce the armor, but they could knock them down, trample them, isolate them. Private Cooper was the first to fall, dragged from the edge by a mounted rider before anyone could react. His screams were lost in the smoke. Grenades were tossed blindly. Flashes lit up shadows, but the horses were fast and the riders even faster. "Target the legs." McCain barked, and within seconds the rifles adjusted bullets, shredding the knees of the horses, sending beasts crashing into their own riders, slowing the advance. The Marines pushed outward, coordinated movements clean, precision. But even so, the wave of Roman ingenuity did not stop. From the west came the engineers, primitive but brilliant. They had built a makeshift catapult during the night, hurling flaming pots filled with pitch. One struck the side of the MRAP, coating it in sticky fire that would not die no matter how they tried. "We need to move." "Now," McCain yelled. The Marines began repositioning, pulling the vehicles backward through narrow trails while laying down suppressive fire. Romans died by the dozens, but their spirits did not break. They saw death as honor, and gods as guides. Every Roman who fell became part of something larger, and that terrified the Marines more than the weapons they are learning. Adapting, becoming something more, Ramirez said as they regrouped at a rocky high point, giving them visual advantage but less cover below. They saw the full scale of the response. A Roman general had arrived, himself flanked by archers, siege towers, and a priest chanting in Latin as if divine favor would turn the tide. McCain crouched beside the satellite unit, trying to get one last connection. "Still dead. We cannot call for evac," he said coldly. "No backup, no air support. We are gods in hell, and there is no one coming to bring us out. But even gods get tired. Food was low water. Lower ammunition was counting down. They had already burned through 60% of their rounds, and grenades were down to single digits. They had tech, but not time. They had firepower, but not rest. The platoon of 15 was now 12, and morale was fading. Then came the second night. No attacks, just drums. The Romans beat them slowly, methodically, echoing through the trees like a ritual. A reminder we are here. We are coming. We will not stop, Private Doyle whispered. Maybe this is what happens when you punch history in the face. It punches back with spirit. McCain looked at him, then nodded. "Tomorrow we go on the offensive, one last push. We hit their command break, the head. Maybe the body falls." And so they prepared in silence, cleaning weapons, dividing rations, making peace with whatever fate tomorrow would bring. They were not fighting to win anymore. They were fighting not to disappear as dawn broke. The Marines lined up for what could be their final strike. 3 claymores set on the forest floor, MRAPs parked facing the open field. Rifles loaded scopes, aligned eyes steeled. They knew the Romans would not stop until the land was soaked in blood and only one army remained standing. It would be decided by noon. The morning sun rose blood-orange and angry, casting long shadows over the battlefield as the Marines stared down the enemy. One last time, they knew this was it. No second chances, no reinforcements, just grit against gods or maybe ghosts. They took their positions flanked by the last two MRAPs, the steel beasts now scarred and blackened by fire and blood. Sergeant McCain looked at his remaining men, each one silent, faces hollow but eyes sharp. Every one of them ready to write a page of history with bullets and breath. The Romans came as expected, but different this time. No more slow marches, no more elegant formations. This was chaos driven by vengeance and fury. They screamed the names of their ancestors. They prayed mid-charge, and behind them came their priest arms raised, calling down favor from divine forces that no one could see but everyone could feel. And at that moment the clash began. The first wave was brutal but clean. Rifle fire met sword and shield. Claymores erupted, throwing bodies skyward. Flames danced again, but this time they came from the barrels of M16s. The Marines moved as one, a single violent whisper cutting through the Roman front like wind through dry grass. But then something shifted. A war horn cried from the left and a second line emerged. Fresh reserves, unarmored conscripts, villagers, perhaps farmers who had taken up arms, driven not by orders but by fear and rage. They are emptying everything. McCain muttered, "This is not a battle anymore. This is desperation, and desperation changes men." Private Doyle was the next to fall. His leg caught in debris as a catapult blast struck nearby. Ramirez pulled him behind cover, firing in blind arcs. But the numbers were too many too fast. The Marines kept shooting, kept yelling, kept bleeding until the first MRAP ran out of ammo, and then the second. And finally McCain made the call. Fall back. Now they retreated to the hilltop, one last stand, the sun directly above them, casting halos on their sweat-soaked helmets, and behind them silence, no more shots, just heavy breathing and the thud of bodies collapsing to the earth from below. The Roman general stepped forward, shield raised but weaponless. His eyes locked on McCain, who stood rifle raised but fingers still. "No more," he said, low and broken. McCain understood and lowered his weapon, and for the first time in days there was peace. They had not won, but they had not lost either. They had made history tremble. They had turned legends into men, and men into stories, and as they sat beside the wreckage of their war machines, surrounded by both fallen enemies and friends, McCain looked up at the sky, still silent, still foreign, and whispered, "Maybe that is enough, because sometimes the greatest victory is not survival. It is being remembered, and Echo Platoon would be remembered forever."